Okay, next up is YouTube. And let's go to YouTube. Alright. Discoverability on YouTube is mostly reliant on their algorithm. That can be a good thing, that can be a bad thing. It really depends on your view. And there's a video I'm going to link to and talk about a little bit, especially as a new content creator. It is really hard at times to get noticed. It can really be an issue, and YouTube doesn't necessarily help with that. The fact that if you look, I have it used to be that I had about the same number of people that were subscribed to me on YouTube as I had over on Twitch, but now Twitch is much higher, even though I make specific content just for YouTube. It does not matter. I have fewer subscribers on YouTube now than I do on Twitch. And I couldn't tell you why. It just does not seem to carry over that way. I am apparently too small for the algorithm to care about me. Except in negative ways, apparently. I'm assuming at least that that's true. Who knows? Who knows? But it can be both good and bad. The algorithm has its definite issues. It does have one advantage, though, which is a lower number of live streamers. There are just not as many people live streaming on YouTube, usually, as there are on Twitch. There are lots of times when there are very few people that are actually streaming on YouTube at any given time. So it is very much easier to be found because there's just fewer people that are doing it. So that aspect of discoverability is much, much higher on YouTube. But as just a content creator and not doing live streams on it, then it may not be as useful. Because then you go back to being just part of the 100 trillion videos a day that people see on YouTube. And it's a flood that is hard to get through. And why they have an algorithm in the first place. Well, besides making money, that's the other aspect of the algorithm. That's a different story. I should also mention that they now do have a membership feature that you can do on YouTube. But you have to be monetizable first, and we're going to get into this a little bit, I think. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it right now. I'm just going to talk about it right now. To get monetized on YouTube actually takes quite a bit. I won't show you the exact details, but you can't even have your own special YouTube channel. You just get a string of numbers and letters to use as your YouTube channel when you have less than 100 subscribers. It's not a thing. You have to have 100 subscribers just to be able to start to have a channel identity on YouTube. And I'm certainly not there. So I get a string of gobbledygook that's like 32 characters long that I have to use when referring to my YouTube channel, which makes it really hard to link people back to my YouTube channel, which is counterproductive entirely. You have to have a user base to watch your stuff before you can make it easy for people to watch your stuff. It doesn't make sense, but it's there, and to be monetized is even harder. So there's a higher barrier to entry to get monetized on YouTube, but there's a much wider total base of users using YouTube. So it's got its pros and cons. If you can get known, and that's the big issue, if you can get known, you can make just as much, if not more money on YouTube, even without the extra tools. Memberships being one of these, and it's the newest one because they didn't have memberships even a couple of years ago. Memberships are a completely new thing. They start to add in the emotes that Twitch has into live streams, that sort of thing. As far as I'm aware, though, these emotes are not universal across all of YouTube. So this is a huge difference. And why I said I was going to talk in the other parts about what makes YouTube different as far as emotes goes. You can't use emotes for discoverability on YouTube because of this. If you can't use emotes in someone else's stream or comments, then you lose that extra discoverability from having cute emotes for people to use. They're pretty much exclusive to your chat, and they stay there, which some people are fine with having that. But it's a big difference. Now, the other thing is super chats. Super chats is the other way to make money in live streaming on YouTube, and are specific to live streaming. You don't get those with other video content. Super chat messages, though, are highlighted messages that show up based on how much someone paid. So there's different colors associated with these, and obviously this makes them stick out more. But it's a very different system. It is more like the tip system that is used on Twitch, but it's tied to messages for some reason that I personally don't understand. Obviously on Twitch you can post a message too when you're tipping. You can have an attached message, and it can work just the same basically, but usually not with the color coding. There's no color coding on Twitch for messages based on how much you spent. That could be good or bad. It's really hard to say, but there's no top tippers or anything on YouTube that I've seen as far as that goes. So it doesn't have quite the same criteria. Now, obviously, if your comments are in your streams and those are archived, then, that person's comment is going to flash by on screen, and I guess there'll be a permanent record of that. But it's questionable, the value difference between super chats and just, tips on Twitch. So there's only so much I can say about that. I've also mentioned the massive user base for YouTube in general. There's something like a couple million people a month that use Twitch. There is about 6 million people a day, I believe I read, that use YouTube every day. So much, much larger total user base, but you have a lot of different categories in here. You have, people that just want to, see the latest meme video that come on YouTube to watch that. And they might not, be there every day. There's lots of different user groups within YouTube. So you have to manage to appeal to a very vastly different set of user groups all within one platform, which is a little more complex. It's a little more complex, and it's going to be talked about in the video I'm going to talk more about here in a little bit. Probably not in those terms. I don't think they ever use those terms, but it's there nonetheless. Here I should also mention that live streams are automatically archived permanently. There's no 14 days, there's none of that. It just goes right to your channel. You don't have to do anything to get them to be archived. It just takes a little while for YouTube to process things. The longer the video, the more processing it takes, and it seems to take a long time sometimes, but it gets archived, and there's no extra effort involved, which can be nice. So that aspect that you have to do on Twitch is not here on YouTube, so that's another advantage to it. Now, we get into copyright issues. YouTube has different copyright systems in a way. If you're monetizing a video and it gets a copyright claim, those claims are normally just going to take your money and not strike the channel, which is the way Twitch deals with everything. They just strike a channel. There's no monetization involved. So if you're not monetized, you'll have a larger potential to just get striked on YouTube, because they're not going to care if they're not going to be able to make money off of it. But at least YouTube acts as sort of a buffer so that you don't get hit with strikes as much, at least, as you would, because they can just get all your money from a video, and that's usually what they'd prefer to do, because striking you doesn't really get them anything, but getting your money obviously does. But that's not a help to you so much because you lose out on the money, and you're gonna have the most money made on a video in the first 30 days, which means if you get a strike or a claim, then your first 30 days are just gone of making money on a video. They're just gone. Doesn't come back. It's just gone. So you really want to avoid copyright issues if you can at all avoid them. It's just how it goes. And it's somewhat better than Twitch because it's at least some other system, but it's still not a good thing. It's still not a good thing, and you just want to try your hardest to avoid copyright issues. That's all that it comes down to. Alright, so I've talked about both systems now. Not quite as long on YouTube. I feel that people know YouTube a little bit better. So I'm going to talk about one last aspect. This video just came out a little bit ago. It's made by someone who's fairly popular. I mean, he's got 1.74 million subs, as you can see at the very bottom of this page here. But this video is by Taku, and he's fairly well known. He's sort of a PNG tuber, sometimes now a VTuber himself. I don't know how people want to categorize him really. And he ties the algorithm and issues on YouTube to mental health, because it really does have an effect of that. He lays it out much better than I can, and it's definitely worth a watch. It's definitely worth a watch. But it's too much for me to go over, so I'm going to leave it to him, because he's going to spend an hour talking about it. And I'm just not going to do an hour to talk about it. Okay, so we've now talked about Twitch and YouTube. So, I'm going to mention some of the others. First up, we have Facebook Gaming, which I've briefly mentioned before. It's probably the third biggest, only because it has Facebook behind it, and there's just a ton of Facebook users. Just a ton. It's not a system I've ever touched, though. At least not in any real sense. So I can't say too much about it. I'm also going to mention a few geographically specific systems that are potentially as big as like YouTube. First of those is Bilibili, which is a Chinese platform. It's meant for internal consumption basically within China. And if you're Chinese and somehow you're watching this, then you've probably seen Bilibili quite a lot more than my videos. They do streaming there, and in fact, some of the big names like HoloLive used to operate on Bilibili. That has come to an end, but they are still a very large platform because it's the common platform to use in China. So by default, it becomes big because it's the only real platform out there in China. But that has some issues. We're not going to go into those issues, but I felt it required a mention. It just required a mention. Some of the VTuber apps specifically integrate with functions in Bilibili, probably because some of those are programs that are made in China or intended originally to be used in China and then sold elsewhere. One other one that I'm going to mention is a Japanese one, and I'm going to mess up the name, I'm pretty positive, but Mirative is a Japanese one, and I've never been on it, but I hear it's a Japanese specific site that is pretty much built for VTubers, so it's going to have a very specific audience, and that can be a big boost. I am not up to doing anything on a site like that, which does not have an English translation for the text. So, I have never used it, and I can't comment on it. But I felt I needed to point out that there are specific ones in certain countries, and they offer an alternative to the big ones we've talked about here. However, especially with the last one, the smaller the platform gets, the easier it is to get known on that platform, but also the harder it is to gain a larger audience. There's just only so many users on those. So any content creators on them have to split up the user audience at any given time among each other. And the smaller you are, the less that number becomes. So it's good early on, but when you get really popular, if you get really popular, it can be sort of something that holds you back. And you can't necessarily go from, say, Billy and just jump to YouTube. It's not that easy. It is not that easy. So, it's going to take a little more work if you use one of the other potential platforms. And I just wanted to point that out, so we all are on the same level. Now, if you're going to use one of the big two, you should probably end up using both of the big two, but in a specific way. There's some reasons for this. To start with, bans are a thing. Twitch has banned people before, even just recently, for things that you may not even notice that you've done. There's some high-profile cases within the last month of people getting banned, or at least being forced to have a vacation from Twitch. I'll put it that way. For at least a week or two, because they did something that at least Twitch thought they did, and that may have not actually been the case. But these companies are so hard to get in touch with in any meaningful way that once they get a ban like this, it's hard to get that just reversed. It is really hard to get that reversed. In Twitch's case, usually, unless this is like a third strike type of situation, you're gonna have just a vacation from Twitch that is like 7 to 14 days, and that's bad, but it's probably recoverable, at least in the long term. YouTube, though, has started to have other issues. Not only temporary bans like that, but channels just suddenly being pulled entirely. This has happened to Kiara from Hololive. Actually happened to multiple people in Hololive. The algorithm or the systems in the back end just decide to take away their channel. The channel just goes away. All the members have their membership fees basically refunded, or not in some cases. And if you're Hololive, you can get your channel back, and that usually just takes, calling up, a business rep and talking directly to someone. But if you're just the average streamer, you're not likely to be able to get in touch with them like that. You would have to go and basically go to Twitter to contact any sort of potential help. And the teams are not connected that do Twitter and do these, case reviews for different videos and channels. So if something goes wrong, it is usually a disaster, a utter disaster, and you might not ever get your channel back. And that's technically true on both platforms, but at least lately, YouTube has a tendency to just completely remove channels and never explain themselves, and you have no idea why. And they might not give the channel back. It might just disappear one day, and then you're gone. You'd have to restart from zero, and that is a hard thing to do. So, to get around that, the best tactic is to have content on both platforms. Personally, I stream on Twitch, and then I archive videos over on YouTube here. And of course, I make some special content just for YouTube that doesn't fit into the Twitch scheme of things. So I use both platforms like that. So if I should happen to get banned on one, for some reason, I can continue making content. I'm not just gone. There is a recoverability factor that comes in here. Now, I don't suggest you stream to multiple platforms at once. You can do this. It works, but then you're looking at like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 different chats, and it's hard to keep track of anyone that you're supposed to be engaging with. So it gets very stressful very quickly unless you have a very small audience. I would personally not try to do this, and I'd rather put all my efforts into streaming on one system at a time and not have to deal with this sort of mess. And if you become a Twitch affiliate or a Twitch partner, you can't just live stream on YouTube. You can't live stream on any system other than Twitch at that point. You can post your content that is a former stream on those systems, but you can't just go and, stream live on both platforms at once. They don't let you do that. It's part of the contract. So that is an issue, and it does need to be talked about, but you probably should not be streaming to multiple platforms at the same time. Pick one, but use both. That is the best idea. If you want, you can even live stream on, say, odd days of the week on YouTube and even days of the week on Twitch. That would work, at least until you get up to partner level on Twitch, and then you'd have to make a decision. Because at that point, you can't stream on 2 platforms. It's part of the contract, as far as I understand it, but I've never seen the partner contract in full. So I'm going by what other people have said. I've never read it myself. So that means eventually you'd have to choose. But you can make that work for you if you want. If you want, you can do it. And there's a synergy here. As I've already mentioned when talking about Twitch, videos can be just moved right from Twitch to YouTube. So they already have a plan for this, and it's built into their site. So it makes a lot of sense to use both, and you want to do this. In fact, everyone will tell you that you want to have content on both. Most people choose to do highlight clips that they post on YouTube because full streams have problematic monetization. Sometimes YouTube has loved them, sometimes YouTube has hated them, and it's hard to know where YouTube is going with this stuff. They change their mind at a whim pretty much. And you never know. There's so many things in the background that make it hard to predict where YouTube is going to jump, and that affects how much money you make if you're planning to make any money. So whether you're planning to make money or not, it's still in your favor to use both platforms. Just use both platforms. Heck, use both and figure out which works better for you. Your results will not be my results. You might have much better results on YouTube than you have on Twitch. It's just the way this works. Maybe you find a better audience there, and your niche is better suited there. It is so hard to say which platform will work better for you. It's just the way it goes. I doubt I could actually bring my audience from Twitch onto YouTube. So far, I have showed no signs of being able to do that, even though I have links and I mention my YouTube channel on a fairly regular basis. But I don't see too many people jumping over from one platform to the other. So there are completely different audiences for me, and that may not be true for everyone, but early on, it probably is true for most people. You get an audience on one platform over the other, and it really depends on how you're found, who finds you, what sort of audience you end up getting. But these are things to consider. Now, talking about moving between platforms, I'm also going to bring up Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. A lot of YouTubers use these systems to try to get people from those platforms to view their content elsewhere. Sometimes this works really well. Sometimes this does not work very much at all. It's, something you might want to play with and see if it does for you or not. Personally, my Twitter followers do not seem to correspond to my numbers on Twitch or YouTube at all. Do not ask me why, but my Twitch and YouTube user base is about a fifth, roughly, of what my audience on Twitter is. A little bit less on YouTube, a little bit, well, roughly right around that on Twitch. So, obviously, I have not been able to get the vast bulk of my potential audience to actually move to another platform. So, it's probably not effectively making money for me. I mean, if I were to look at my Twitter activities and put them into a monetary context, it's probably not helping. But anything that gets your word out could be useful, so I keep doing it. That may or may not be a good thing down the road, but we will see how that goes. Maybe it will pay off one day. Maybe it just never will. It's hard to say. It really is. But even most content creators on Twitch or YouTube have Twitter accounts because it's an easy way to inform your audience if they follow you on Twitter that, you've posted a new video or you're streaming for the day. A lot of people ignore those posts completely, but you never know. And especially the bigger you are, the more you're likely to get feedback from that stuff. So it can be very useful. I do not use Instagram or TikTok. I could potentially make content for those, but I have so little time as it is. I do not need to make another basic activity that I need to do every day. So I've never used those. And maybe you can get them to work. Maybe you can't. It's going to be up to you to try and see and figure out if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Don't. Let it go. Or not. You could be stubborn like I am about Twitter. And I've made a lot of friends on Twitter. So, that is a thing to consider too. But don't expect it to make you an audience on one platform or another. Some people make it work. Some people just are not going to be able to do that. And I think that's all for us for right now. So, goodbye and take care. See ya!